We have made it to the 2028 NFL Draft. I appreciate everyone's patience over the last week or so as we get set for another draft here on the channel. We've been following the careers of all these guys for years now. A loaded quarterback crop with projected number one pick Malachi Foreman, Virginia Tech's very own Judah Hudson. We'll get to see where Nazir Ismail starts his NFL career, along with all of our favorite players from the Virginia Tech dynasty who we've gotten to know over the last 3 years. Last episode was free agency, and we were pretty busy, extending Paris Johnson, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Mike Hall, and Will McDonald, amongst others. And then in free agency, it was a pretty weak class, so we couldn't really spend much money, but we added Zion Johnson to help complete the offensive line, along with some other depth pieces as well. Going into the draft, I think our roster is in a really good spot because we don't really have many clear and obvious needs. This is a very well-rounded group, and I'd feel comfortable with every single one of our projected starters going into the year as a starter. So I'm wondering if that potentially changes the strategy for us going into the draft, knowing that this is a team that should be competing for a title. We've got a really good quarterback on a rookie contract, and we're looking to take advantage of it. If you'd like to download the draft class, go into the draft class file finder. You can type in my PSN and you'll be able to access all 3 draft class of the series so far. I'm not sure why the second draft class, there's 2 of them. I think both of them work, so it doesn't really matter which one you download. Going into the draft, we're pretty even in terms of our stash of picks. We don't have many extra picks, but we have all of our choices at least in the first 3 rounds, including number 22 overall in the first round. So because of that, I do think we have the ammo to move up and down the board if we choose, but it would be nearly impossible for us to move really past anywhere in the top 10. So with that, we'll get this show on the road. The 2028 NFL Draft is now open, and the Las Vegas Raiders are on the clock with the number 1 pick. Ever since the end of the year, we've been expecting this to be Malachi Foreman, and with his run leading Ohio State to a national championship, that likely cemented him at the top spot. Darryl Ramsor, Chris Islands, and Nazir Ismail, we expect to be the next 3 players off the board, with as many as 6 quarterbacks going in the first round. So with the number 1 pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select Malachi Foreman, quarterback out of the Ohio State University. So no surprise at number 1. Unlike last year when the Buccaneers moved up 2 spots to grab Tyree Wells, a move that in hindsight looks like a pretty good one for them, the Raiders need a quarterback, and Malachi Foreman is a legit number 1 prospect. 6'5", around 200 pounds. He's tall, a little bit skinny, but he's got a rocket of an arm. Maybe the strongest arm in the NFL right now. The kid is a proven winner, helping lead Ohio State to an undefeated season and a national championship. The question is, how much of that was because of him and how much of that is because of his supporting cast, who could have 8 to 10 players picked in the first round alone? The answer is probably a little bit of both. He's a 73 overall, but he does have hidden development, and he's only 20 years old. 5,000 yards, 53 touchdowns, 70% completion percentage, and only 1 interception. The numbers this year as a redshirt sophomore were absolutely ridiculous, and he definitely took a leap up from his freshman year where he was good, but I would say certainly inconsistent. So now that the top quarterback is off the board, the Dolphins and Colts are 2 teams who I think will look to address QB tonight, but now's probably a little bit early with elite prospects at other positions and the quarterbacks likely to go outside the top 5. But I don't think Tua Tagovailoa is really cutting it for the Dolphins, and I don't think Colin Westwood will stop them from drafting a first rounder, and I think the same can be said for the Colts and Kyler Murray. However, with that being said, I think it would be foolish for either one of these teams to pick one of the QBs now when they can get an elite player, maybe on the other side of the ball. With the second pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Darryl Ramsor, edge rusher out of the University of Miami. The hometown hero grew up in Hollywood, Florida, just outside of the city, played his college ball at the University of Miami, and will now start his NFL career with the Miami Dolphins. This guy is an absolute freak. 4.25 40-yard dash as an edge rusher. He's a little undersized, but he's too talented not to pick. He's an 85 Overall, the highest rated player in the draft class, the highest rated player drafted in any of the 3 seasons so far, with 99 speed and acceleration. He had 16 sacks this year, which led the ACC, although I thought he was a little underwhelming in the 2 college football playoff games. Did not record a sack in either of them. He's got to bulk up. He's only 220 pounds, and he'll probably lose a little speed, but the athletic talent is just too much to pass up. With the 3rd pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Indianapolis Colts select Chris Islands, cornerback out of the Ohio State University. The 2nd Buckeye is off the board. It's Islands, who went into the year as a possible 1st-round guy, but then he really broke out onto the scene. And then in the college football playoff, I mean, holy cow, was this guy unstoppable. He was a blanket in coverage, and I'm expecting that to carry over to the next level where he is an 84 overall. He was really impressive, I thought, against Virginia Tech. Sure, Nazir Ismail had 10 catches, but for his standards, he was quiet. Made a bunch of big plays late in the Texas game, and then in the national championship against Georgia, possible 1st-round receiver Adrian Moon only caught the ball twice, and one of those, Islands, wasn't even his matchup. The Rams are here at number 4, and this is the pick we presume will be where Nazir Ismail goes. And I love the fit with him on the Rams, getting to catch passes from Isaiah Timph, play alongside Puka Nacua, and have Sean McVay as his head coach. This is an outstanding landing spot for our guy, and I'm going to be really happy to see him play with a well-rounded organization who I know hasn't really been great through the course of the series. I mean, there's a reason why they're picking in the top 5, but I think they can turn it around with a guy like him. Now, a lot of you guys have suggested that we try to move up for Nazir Ismail. He's a channel legend. He was awesome at Virginia Tech. It would be a great storyline. But as you would expect, the cost to move up would be ridiculous. I mean, one of the trade offers here is Myles Garrett. And it is an interesting idea given that he is 32. He is starting to regress. He's now a 98 overall. But I think this would be kind of foolish because we're a team that's in a title window. So why would we trade the best player in the NFL, who still probably has 3 more good years left of his prime? He's got double-digit sacks 10 years in a row. He still has 3 years left on his contract. He hasn't really shown that he wants to leave Cleveland. The guy has 151 sacks. I mean, this is a generational player, and even though he is a little bit older, what message would it send for us to trade away Myles Garrett now? The other trade here in the Trade Finder involving players would be Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and Carson Swessinger. I'm not even going to entertain this because it's not realistic in the slightest. No team is trading a top 5 pick for 2 off-ball linebackers. If we were to trade a bunch of picks, it would look like this. Our next 3 first-rounders, including number 22 overall, along with 2 second-rounders and a 6. I mean, this is just a gigantic trade package to move up for an unproven commodity who isn't even a quarterback. It's one thing if we needed a QB and we're going up to get one, but that's not what we would be doing here. This idea just kind of feels outlandish, and as much as I would love Nazir Ismail on our team because it's no secret how good he is, we have to think critically for a second. But I did think about it, and I eventually came to the realization that this idea is just crazy. So crazy, in fact, that it actually kind of makes sense. Fortune favors the bold. 3 1s, 2 2s, and a 6 are on the move to the Los Angeles Rams for the number 4 pick in the draft. Folks, this is actually happening. Buckle up. A draft day bombshell. Cleveland is moving into the top 5. And as I alluded to during the start of today's video, I talked about how our roster is in a really good place. This team really does not have that many holes. So what good does it do for us to stand pat where we are and draft rookies who are going to play part-time roles, like we did last year with John Okporowa, Eric Henderson, and Jeff Gokon? I think all 3 of those guys are really good, and I think they're each going to play bigger roles for us this season. But I feel that this team is in the midst of a Super Bowl chase. We've got an opportunity to win it this year, but the one thing that I think we're missing is star power in the skill position room. We're deep at running back, we're deep at receiver, but we don't have that alpha playmaker that a lot of these other great teams have. A guy who, when all else fails, we can try to get the ball to. Sure, it's a major gamble. We don't have the second rounder this year. We don't have the first rounder next year or the following year. We lose our first rounder this year. I mean, this completely goes against my philosophy. To trade away multiple first round picks into the future like this, But I think this is an exception because our roster is in a great spot. And this is the only way I feel like that we're going to be able to add true star power for the roster. So with the 4th pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select Nazir Ismail, wide receiver out of Virginia Tech. Our guy is headed to Cleveland. A shocking draft day move that sees the Browns trade their next 3 first-round picks along with 2 seconds and a 6th. This is a lot to move up and get a wide receiver. It's not like we're moving up to get a quarterback. But the way I think about this is I go back to 2011 in the Atlanta Falcons. They moved up from the mid-20s all the way to number 6 overall to get Julio Jones. And they gave up a lot less than we did because top draft picks were worth less in 2011 than they are now in 2028. However, if the Falcons knew what they knew now, and the price was 3 first-round picks and 2 second-rounders to go up and get Julio, they would absolutely still do it because Julio Jones is one of the best receivers in the history of the NFL. And watching Nazir Ismail's college career, specifically these last 2 years, I genuinely believe that's the type of player we're looking at. The total package at 6'5", runs a sub 4.4. He's an elite route runner. He's dominant after the catch, and he's arguably one of, if not the most productive receivers in the history of college football. 1,800 yards in each of the last 2 years. Yeah, he didn't have his best game against Ohio State. He still had 10 catches. Against Miami, he only had 4 for 60, but he also had an 80-plus yard rushing touchdown and a punt return touchdown. And other than that, he doesn't have any games this year with less than 90 yards. 339 career catches, 5,296 yards, and 52 touchdowns. He broke Corey Davis's career record for the most receiving yards in the history of FBS football. And he did it with a different starting quarterback in each of the 4 years of his career. This year, it was Judah Hudson. As a junior, we had Cam Kingsbury and Ace Morgan. As a sophomore, it was Clyde Poole. But remember, we didn't even get to watch his freshman year. Remember who his quarterback was in the first year as a freshman? It was Kieran Riddle. And now the two of them are reunited. Watching him progress over the last couple of years has been so fun. I mean, he just moves differently than everybody else. He can break tackles. He can make guys miss with the ball in his hands. He's the most dynamic receiver after the catch in this year's draft. That's not to mention he's lightning fast, and his acceleration is elite. He can get from 0 to 100 in about 2 steps. His release is probably the best I have ever seen off the line of scrimmage. He's an elite separator. There's nothing he cannot do with the ball in his hands. The one question mark about Nazir Ismail is the drops. He dropped 10 passes this year. That led college football, but it's partly because we forced the ball to him so much because he's so good. The 3rd-ranked player in the draft, hit in development, 6'5", 205, 95 speed, 99 acceleration, and boy, does it show on tape. 96 agility, 93 change of direction, very high release, very high route running across the board. I trust him in the short game, I trust him in the intermediate game, and he can certainly stretch the field vertically. If he can just improve the contested catches, then he will be a flawless player. 88 overall, but that's with a temporary boost. He's actually an 84, which is still really, really good. And throughout the pre-draft process, at first, when the idea of trading up for Nazir Ismail was brought up, I did believe it was crazy. It wasn't until after the playoff game where we lost to Tennessee where I actually kind of thought about it. And then going through free agency, seeing that weak free agency class, knowing that this might be the only way to go up and get true star power, it kind of made sense to me. And that's why I decided to make one of the most surprising moves in the history of the NFL draft, going up and getting Nazir Ismail. Now, unfortunately, it comes at a cost. We only have one other pick in the top 150 this year. We do not exactly have a lot of draft capital now over the next 3 years, but I think given how complete our roster is, it's okay. We can afford to go and make a move like this. We're not going to be picking for a while, so let's sit back and enjoy this show. With the 5th pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Ogden Filipovich, defensive tackle out of the Ohio State University. A 3rd Buckeye is off the board in the top 5. I mean, this is hardly a surprise. We knew Ohio State was going to dominate the top of this draft, playing against them in the Rose Bowl, watching them in the semifinals against Texas, watching them in the national championship against Georgia, it was clear that this team is a little bit different than everybody else. Now, much like Darryl Ramsor, Filipovich was not that impressive, I feel like, in the college football playoff. But he did have 16.5 sacks this year, which led the Big Ten by far, and he's an 83 overall. To me, this draft had 4 blue-chip non-quarterbacks, and they were just the last 4 players taken. All of them are the real deal. They're each at least an 83 overall, and they all have hidden dev. So now the Ravens are in a tough spot. Where do you go from here? With the 6th pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Baltimore Ravens select Asavius Harmony, defensive tackle out of Tennessee. Now, this is a little bit of a surprise. He was the 4th projected defensive tackle in this draft, but it feels like every year, one of the defensive tackles ends up going a lot earlier than expected. I'll tell you what, though, I'm a huge fan of Harmony's game. A true junior at 6'4", 312, 13.5 sacks this year, 77 overall at only 21 years old with a development trait. I really don't have any complaints about this pick at all. Actually, the one complaint I do have is that this demon is now in our division. I think he's a really good player, and I'm terrified about the thought of him being next to Nnamdi Madubuike twice a year. With the 7th pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Washington Commanders select Amar Simpkins Jr., wide receiver out of the University of Mississippi. We got to play against Ole Miss twice this year, and it was pretty obvious how talented Amar Simpkins is. And to me, he is the 2nd best receiver in the class. 6'5", about 210 pounds. He's physically very similar to Nazir Ismail. The one difference that these two guys have is that Simpkins is a little bit slower. And he decided not to go to the NFL Combine. He decided not to run the 40-yard dash, which was probably a good business decision in hindsight. He's really good, though. He's a 78 overall with hidden development. Had a great freshman year at Northern Illinois. Transfers to Ole Miss, where he continues his dominance. 27 touchdowns over the last 2 years. He has averaged 1,300 yards a season in his 3-year career, and I think his skill level will absolutely translate to the NFL and a Commanders team who needs a number 1 receiver for Jaden Daniels. With the 8th pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Dallas Cowboys select Noah Komodo Muercho, defensive tackle from San Diego State. The Aztecs are in the top 10. Muercho is a professional quarterback hunter. 25.5 sacks over the last 2 years. College football's active leader in sacks, but he has found a way to get better in each and every season at San Diego State. 6'4", 295, he's not the biggest. I wouldn't say he's the most athletic. He's only a 75 overall, but he does come in with hidden development. Dude's an absolute ox, 98 strength. I think he will be able to stay on the field on all 3 downs because not only is he a dominant pass rusher, but he's got the anchor to be a really good run defender as well. 3 of the last 4 picks have been defensive tackles in what I think is a very strong defensive tackle crop. With the 9th pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the New England Patriots select Denario Lasco, defensive tackle from Texas Tech. 4 of the last 5 picks have been interior defensive linemen. Lasco's the next up. We got to play against him a couple years ago when he was a true junior at Texas Tech. And yeah, it was pretty obvious that this guy is the real deal. As a senior this year, he had 25 TFLs, 10.5 sacks, including one in the playoff game against Notre Dame. Only a 75 overall with normal development, which certainly feels a little bit disappointing given the top 10 draft capital. But I do think this is a guy who's going to be able to give New England some big snaps in the middle, get after the quarterback a little bit, even if he's not going to hit the ceiling that we kind of projected with him watching his collegiate career play out with the Red Raiders. The Philadelphia Eagles are on the clock at number 10, and this is a pivot point in this draft. Look at 11, 12, and 13. The Seahawks, Lions, and Saints. They all need quarterbacks. So a team like, say, I don't know, the Miami Dolphins, who really need a quarterback, are going to move up and try to get their guy. The Dolphins, remember, they already picked in the first round, number 2 overall. They don't have another first rounder they can give this year. But the 34th pick, a first and a third next year, and a 4th in 2030 will be enough to move up for the 10th pick in the draft, along with a 5th rounder as well. So the Dolphins now have 2 top 10 picks this year, presumably moving up for a quarterback. The question is, which one? With the 10th pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Judah Hudson, quarterback out of Virginia Tech. The second quarterback off the board is our guy Judah, who's going in the top 10. He'll compete with Tua Tagovailoa to be the starter in South Beach, and if he wins the job, we will get to see him in Week 4. Judah Hudson is one of the most physically talented quarterbacks I've ever scouted. 6'4", 230, best rushing quarterback in the draft, and he's got a rocket of an arm. Now, there are a lot of questions with his game, and maybe sitting for a year would be in his best interest. He did throw 10 interceptions this year. He only completed 64% of his throws. He struggled against big-time opponents. Didn't have his best game against Ohio State. Really played poorly against Miami. But he's got a cannon of an arm, and he's an elite runner. 889 rushing yards, 13 touchdowns on the ground to go along with 30 passing scores this year as well. So now begins the game of quarterback musical chairs, because you've got 4 first-round projected QBs coming up with Gerald Hannock, Wyatt Cruz, Nick Eberle, and Ryan Lockley. But only 3 teams here who need a quarterback, so one of them is going to get left out. The Seahawks at number 11 select Gerald Hannock out of LSU. So he will compete with both Sam Darnold and Jared Goff to be the starter in Seattle. Arguably the most accurate quarterback in the draft. He's going to come in as a 76, but only with normal development. He completed 75% of his throws this year, 74% last year at Arkansas, where he started for 3 years before going to LSU. He's got the arm strength. He's got the speed and explosiveness. We never got to watch him in the playoff, unfortunately, which I guess is what happens when you're at Arkansas for 3 years. But I think he's one of the safer quarterbacks in the class because he is super accurate, but he can also win out of structure, on the move and away from the pocket. The Detroit Lions at number 12 select Wyatt Cruz, quarterback out of Texas. So he will compete with Clyde Poole to be the starter in Detroit. I was really impressed with Cruz in the playoff. It's unfortunate that he's only a 70 overall, although he does have hidden development. It did feel like throughout Cruz's career at times, there was always something left to be desired. From his 3 years at Oklahoma before transferring to their arch rival, the Texas Longhorns. I was very impressed with him, though, in the playoff. He had 9 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and he was far from the reason why Texas choked away the game against Ohio State in the semifinals. Had the rest of the team not blew it, he would have gotten to play in the national championship. With the 13th pick, the New Orleans Saints select Ryan Lockley, quarterback out of Georgia. The national championship quarterback on the other side is off the board. 24 years old, 2-year starter with the Dogs, but he's a 78 overall. He is really good. 5,500 yards, 58 passing touchdowns, but he did throw 10 interceptions last year, and he had 16 last year. Much like Judah Hudson, this is a guy who often has struggled against big-time opponents. I thought he really didn't play well in their first playoff game against Wisconsin, up and down against Miami, up and down in the championship against Ohio State, and then last year in the semifinals against Miami, he was the reason why they blew a 20-point lead. So we've seen now 5 quarterbacks go off the board, and Nick Eberle is the last man standing. How long will he wait to hear his name with no other obvious QB-needy teams in the first round? With the 14th pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Smoke Lewis, defensive back out of Virginia Tech. A third Hokie is off the board, and this one is very well deserved. Smoke Lewis had an absolutely outstanding junior season. He was a rotational player as a freshman and as a sophomore. This was his first year as a full-time starter on the outside. And during the second half of the year, he might have been the best defensive player in America. He probably caught more passes from like week 6 onward than the receivers he was covering. I mean, truly a dominant lockdown corner. He's going to start as an 80 overall with hidden development. He looks like the real deal. 6 foot, 196, only 21 years old. Excellent ball skills, elite covered player. I think this is a phenomenal selection for the Jaguars, who are right back on the clock. Remember, they traded away Josh Hines-Allen to Carolina. This pick they got from the Panthers, and it's LeBrandon Berry, defensive tackle from Alabama. I think this is a pretty safe pick. You're getting a guy who's going to be able to contribute early on. Now, I don't know where he's going to see the field because the Jaguars signed both Vita Vea and Christian Wilkins this offseason. Granted, both of those guys only signed 1-year deals, but where will Berry fit amongst those guys right away? 20 TFLs and 11 sacks this year as a senior, coming in as a 77 with normal. The San Francisco 49ers have 2 of the next 4 picks, and at number 16, they get Avion Graham, defensive back out of Georgia. We're going to see a run on Georgia defensive backs, and I think there could be as many as 5 who go in the first round. I'm a little surprised that it's Graham who ends up being the first of the bunch. I thought he might have been the best of the group, though, during the playoff. He, of course, had the big pick 6 against Wisconsin. He had 3 other interceptions this year, and he's a 77 with hidden development. This is a really solid covered player. Only led up 26 catches this year, only 23 last year as a redshirt freshman. The Niners drafted a corner in the first round a year ago, and Buxton Weischer. So far, the pick hasn't really worked out, and I think this one is ultimately going to lead to better results. I think Avion Graham is the real deal. The Atlanta Falcons at number 17 select the Heisman Trophy winner, Lamarian Starzl, the wide receiver from the University of South Florida. He had an incredible year, 111 catches, 2,098 yards, the all-time college football single-season record, and 30 receiving touchdowns. Starzl's going to come in as a 78, but with only normal development. Now, will he be able to translate to the NFL going away from South Florida's very receiver-friendly playbook? If Jalen Davies-Landener's first 2 seasons in Cincinnati tell us anything, then the answer is a resounding yes. Jalen Davies-Landener led the NFL in receiving yards this past year. DJ Harbor, cornerback out of Georgia, off the board of the Steelers. I told you we're going to see a little bit of a run. Harbor does not have the interception numbers that many of his teammates do, but he's arguably the best covered player of the bunch, and I think he's a really good run defender. I think he's going to fit the Steeler culture really well. 6'1", 193. Good traits, really fast. Not necessarily a guy who's going to make the splash plays like, say, Avion Graham does, but a really, really good covered player who I thought was pretty good in the playoff. The Niners are back on the board at number 19, but not for long. We've got a trade, and it's a big one. They're going to be acquiring Devontae Smith and 2 fourth-rounders from the Eagles for number 19 and a 5th. The way I see it for the Eagles is they're about to enter cap hell. Devontae Smith will be 30 by the time his next contract kicks in, and the Eagles struck gold 2 years ago in the second round with Nathan Wilson, the running back receiver hybrid out of the University of Miami, who just won the Offensive Player of the Year. It doesn't make sense for them to give Smitty big money. They're moving up for the top tight end in the draft, Tyson Takota out of the Ohio State University. I thought he was a lock to go in the top 10. Maybe it's the positional value, maybe it's because he's undersized, maybe teams don't think he's that good. But watching him during the playoff, where he had 118 yards in the semis against Texas and 83 yards in the championship against Georgia, it was obvious that he's a star. 21 years old, 81 overall, 91 speed, hidden development, and I'll tell you what, his dev trait is not star. I mean, this guy is awesome. He's legitimately a Kyle Pitts, Brock Bowers-esque tight end prospect. Howie Roseman does it again. 838 yards this year, that led all of the FBS tight ends in terms of receiving yards. The Chicago Bears at number 20 will stick with the Buckeye trend. It's Savion Rocker, the left tackle. Finally, our first offensive lineman off the board. It took us 20 picks, which feels really high, but I think this is where we're going to start to see a run. 75 overall, hidden development. We didn't get to see him in the Rose Bowl against Virginia Tech. He was hurt, but he did play in the last 2 games, and he looked pretty solid. The Saints select Nicholas Allen, the third offensive tackle out of Texas. I guess the run on lineman is starting now. The interesting thing about these top 2 tackles is that they were projected like 20 picks away from each other, yet they go right next to each other. Allen's a 75. He hopes to be the long-term blindside blocker for Ryan Lockley. That pick from the Saints was their own choice. The original Lockley pick they got from Buffalo in the Judah Yesufu trade-up last year. So this is where we would have picked at number 22. It's now the Rams, who ended up acquiring 2 additional firsts and 2 additional seconds for us in that deal. Well, this team has a lot of money, and I think they're really going for it. How about number 22, the 6th rounder that we gave them, and a 3rd rounder next year to the Raiders for Max Crosby? Gets them a big-time piece on the defensive line next to Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, and Kobe Turner. The Raiders, meanwhile, get to add more for their offense as they move up for Jamequan Azobor, the offensive guard out of the Ohio State University. So he blocked for Malachi Foreman in college, and the 2 of them will stay teammates in the NFL. 76 overall, normal development, maybe not a grand slam of a pick, but a guy who I feel pretty confident is going to start in this league for quite a while. So for those who are counting at home, that's now 6 Ohio State players drafted in the first round, 3 of the last 4 picks. The Chargers select Isaiah Speezy, safety out of Georgia. This guy is awesome. And had we stayed at number 22, and this is how the board would have played out, I would have ran this pick up to the podium, no questions asked. I don't know how he fell this far. He's an 81 overall, hidden development. This, to me, is the best safety prospect since Kyle Hamilton. Although it's close, Spencer Turpin 2 years ago with the Cowboys, Speezy's former teammate at Georgia. He has true center field speed. He can take up so much ground. You do not want to throw the ball near him because he's going to make a play on it. We saw during the playoff, teams would not throw it deep against Georgia. He was the reason why. He was the MVP of the secondary. I think he's going to be one of the 5 best players in this draft. Hell, I probably would have moved up a few spots just to make sure I could get him. Ja'Kiah Zuper, linebacker from James Madison to the Jets. This is an interesting pick because he was awesome as a redshirt freshman, but struggled this year as a sophomore. They converted him to an edge rusher. He missed some games with an injury, but the Jets are going to throw that tape away. They saw that James Madison used him wrong. He's a linebacker, and he's a damn good one. So he's going to be the pick for them. I think this is where we're going to start to see some of these off-ball linebackers coming off the board. He ends up being the first one. Nate Crummy, cornerback out of Texas to the Cincinnati Bengals. I would not say this is a crummy pick. I thought he was really good in the playoff. Had the big pick six against Nick Eberle and Clemson to really help them win that game. Eberle, of course, is still on the board. Did we expect that coming into today? 78 overall, only normal development. But I think him and Tyler Gamble, who they drafted in the first round out of Georgia 2 years ago, will be a pretty nice corner duo together with a lot of guys who can play the slot as well. He's got to improve in man coverage. He's got to add some weight, be a little more physical, but in an NFL weight room, I think he can. The Atlanta Falcons, with their second first-rounders, select Isaiah DeRugi, linebacker / edge rusher out of Georgia. This is a really interesting pick. I certainly like the player. 13.5 sacks, tied with Xavier's Harmony for the most in the SEC. And he had 10 last year, 9.5 the year before. To me, he's a very similar prospect to Jalen Walker, who also went to Georgia and also plays for the Falcons. I think the only difference is that DeRugi is just a lot slower. But otherwise, I think the idea is nearly identical. Now, I don't think this is the Jalen Walker replacement. I think he's too good of a player for Atlanta to let go of. But I think more so those two guys are going to pair up together. Nick Pooley, safety out of Ohio State, goes to the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm curious to see what his role is going to be in the NFL because he's good at a lot of different things. I think you can trust him in the back end to cover. I think you can put him in man coverage in the slot on a tight end, a receiver, or a running back. I think you can even trust him in the box maybe. This is a guy who can wear a lot of different hats, play a lot of different roles, and I think the Chiefs are going to value that. A guy who they can sort of use as a versatile chess piece and play all over the defense. 78 overall, only normal dev, but I think he's a really, really good player. Ramar Proust, linebacker out of Georgia State to the New York Football Giants. This guy's really athletic. Kind of a boomer bust. Well, unfortunately, he's only a 70 overall. 6'1", about 240. He's short and stubby, but he's built thickly. 92 speed, 97 acceleration. Maybe the Giants try to convert him into an edge rusher. I don't know. He's an interesting prospect, an interesting player profile. As we have a trade at number 29, the Colts are moving up 6 spots, giving Minnesota their 4th rounder at number 99. The Colts, of course, have a need for a quarterback. They didn't pick one at number 3. Could this be who we think it is? Nick Eberle is off the board to the Indianapolis Colts at number 29. Eberle is a redshirt sophomore, led Clemson to a national title. Played really well this year as a junior, too. But he's only a 69 with normal. He'll get to sit behind Kyler Murray, and given that he's only 21, I don't think all hope is lost. 4,200 yards this year, 35 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions, coming off 16 interceptions the year prior as a sophomore, one with a career-high 65% completion percentage. The accuracy's always been kind of iffy with him, but it's gotten better in each of his 3 years as a starter. Ryan Rayner, center out of Ohio State to the Titans. I've lost count. I think this is the 8th Buckeye player off the board. 81 overall, only a 1-year starter at center. Remember, Ohio State had the top center last year in Alex Hubert of the Vikings. Now they do again this year with Ryan Rayner, who's going to Tennessee. Really high-quality player. He'll be able to start there for a while. Deion Gaffney, defensive tackle out of Notre Dame to the Philadelphia Eagles. Gaffney's a quality player. I don't necessarily think the floor is super high, but at 313 pounds, you can stuff him in the middle. He can clog rushing lanes, and I think he can get after the quarterback a little bit. I thought he had a really solid season this year with the Irish, racking up 8.5 sacks. Dad Wagner to the Packers to round out the first round. There's a reason why good teams stay good, and that's because they build the offensive line. 80 overall, hidden development. Maybe not the sexy, glamorous pick, but he's probably going to end up being the best offensive lineman picked in the first round, and we saw a lot of them drafted over the last 10 or 12 picks. Really quality selection for the Packers as they look to stay atop the NFC North. I hope they don't. So that wraps up our first round. We have 6 quarterbacks go off the board, including Malachi Foreman at number 1, Darryl Ramsor to the Dolphins, Chris Islands to the Colts, and of course, the big surprise of them all, the Browns trade 3 1s, 2 2s, and a 6 to move up and select Nazir Ismail, the wide receiver out of Virginia Tech. A lot of Ohio State representation. I think we finished with 9 Buckeyes in the first round, either 8 or 9. A lot of Georgia Bulldogs as well. We probably had about 6, 7, I would say. And even Virginia Tech We had Judah Hudson go at number 10 at the Dolphins, Smoke Lewis at number 14 at the Jaguars. I'm really surprised Roland Mathis didn't go in the first compared to some of the other guys, but I would think he will be one of the very first players off the board in the second round. The position groups I've got my eye on here are defensive line, some surprising edge rushers still on the board. Offensive line, I think we're going to see a run. And then running back. We did not have any running backs go in the first round this year after having Cornell Teamer and Amari Blue go in the top half of the first round in each of the last 2 years. But we're going to have a lot, I think, go early in round 2. We've got some trades to discuss, though. The Seahawks have a new quarterback and Gerald Bohannock they need to protect. They'll be acquiring Trey Smith from the Kansas City Chiefs for the 43rd overall pick. Trey Smith is still one of the best guards in the NFL. He is 29. Chiefs get younger, Seahawks get better. The Niners just acquired Devontae Smith, who I think they'd rather pay than Brandon Ayuk. Devontae Smith is younger and he's a little bit better. So Ayuk is going to the Titans for the 62nd pick, along with a swap of 4s. Calvin Ridley retired. Tennessee adds a new number 1 who will join forces with Brian Matty, their first rounder last year. The Bengals really don't want to trade T. Higgins because he's still really good, but he's on the last year of his deal. They're eventually going to have to give Jamar Chase a new deal, and they're eventually going to have to pay Jalen Davies-Landiner. And both of those players just take the precedent over T. Higgins. So he is going to the Raiders for the very first pick in the second round. It's ironic because T. Higgins himself was the 33rd pick overall, and now that's what the Bengals trade him for nearly a decade later, along with a swap of mid-round picks. The Bengals will start off the second round with Adrian Moon. They cannot help themselves, can they? So Moon is only a 72 with normal development. He had a great season, though, at Georgia. Him and K. Mariah Jackson were quite the 1-2 punch. Moon had 1,769 yards and 18 touchdowns. Only Lamarian Starzl and Nazir Ismail had more yards. He'll replace the role of T. Higgins while the Raiders had a big-time number 1 target for Malachi Foreman. Gerard Cook is to the Eagles. His stock slipped because of the combine, but have no fear, Eagles fans. He is an 84 overall. Tyrone Hubbard, the safety from Oklahoma State, to the Vikings. The Rams are back on the clock. They select Lamont Ingram, tackle from SMU. When he's healthy, he's good, but he's got to stay healthy. Roland Mathis is off the board to the New York Jets. It's fitting because this was not originally their pick. They got this selection from Arizona a while ago in the Quinnen Williams trade back in Season 2. There are some similarities, I think, in Roland Mathis' game. He's gotten roughly around 10 sacks, just shy, in each of the last 2 years. And he's really gotten better and better for us. I'm super excited for him going to the Jets. I think he's going to be a good pro. The Ravens select LaShawn Prater, guard out of Ole Miss. As I talked about with Green Bay, there's a reason why good teams stay good. It's because they build upon the trenches. The Ravens, obviously, with the number 6 pick this year, they were quite disappointing, but they also won 7 of their last 10 games. So I have the feeling they will not be back here next year. Linebacker Ben Grave Motion goes to the Commanders, while the Bears are moving up 12 spots with the Cowboys, as Dallas gets a future third in the process. The Bears have a hole at running back. Could this be where the first halfback comes off the board? Yes, it is. Curtin Pexel out of Georgia is going to Chicago, who compete with DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai to be the starter. So watching Curtin Pexel in the 2 years he played at Georgia, it's obvious this kid's got the goods. And he is a 77 overall. He's a good player. The question with him, though, is the medical. He had a hard time staying on the field both seasons by the end. I mean, his body was just worn out. He got injured in the semifinals against Miami. Didn't get to play in the national championship against Ohio State. Our second running back comes off next. Malachi Dunham to New England. 83 overall. He only has normal development, but what a season. And what a player he has been at the University of Florida. This year, he had a great year with the Gators. He ran for 957 yards only in 10 games and 13 touchdowns. For reference, Curtin Pexel at 1,000 yards and 20 touchdowns. A little bit better, but Dunham is actually going to be rated higher. Tobias Ellerby to the Eagles. He is an 80. That's the third 80-plus player the Eagles have picked today. Kenji Ito will replace Trey Smith at right guard. He was a monster in the playoff, but he's only a 71. Little disappointing. LaMichael Love to the Lions. Darryl Ramsor's partner in crime at Miami. Deontay Steffen, running back, Iowa to the Bills. He's nice. 81 overall, hidden development. This is a guy who I think would have probably been a third or fourth rounder last year. He entered the portal, ended up going back to Iowa, where he was really good. He only played 7 games, but he ran for 702 yards and 9 touchdowns, and then he ran a 4.25 40-yard dash after running for 1,465 yards last year. Tyreek Bradner, tackle Wisconsin to the Jaguars, not rated super high, but I thought he was great in the playoff. He was the best player on the field against South Florida. Speaking of, their linebacker, Javier Salazar to Carolina, tackle Gabriel Price from Miami to the Broncos, and then Jalen Gandy, running back, Alabama to the Bucs. 20 years old, 79 overall, hidden development. It was always Jalen Gandy RB1. The question is, can he be an RB1 in the NFL? Because he wasn't the RB1 on his own team. But he'll get to share the backfield with Bucky Irving, and I think eventually be the long-term starter in Tampa Bay. Had a really good year, 6 yards a carry, 784 yards, and 18 touchdowns as the number 2. Kobe Williams, wide receiver, Oklahoma State. I'm a big fan of his game. He's a guy who I probably would have picked in the second round had we not traded up for Ishmael. So it's a good thing we did in hindsight because he wouldn't have been on the board for our second rounder. Barry Wilkerson, tackle out of USC to the Niners, had a great combine. Didn't really help his stock as much as I thought it would. Xavier Rumble to the Cowboys. Remember, they traded down here to get him. He's an 80 at only 20 years old. And the surprising thing about this pick, I mean, for one thing, he was supposed to go in the top half of the first round, but he had a bad combine. Slips to the second round. Clearly not an issue. He's really good. But the first round projected edge rushers, Dale Hickson from Auburn and Ahmad Smith from Georgia, are both still on the board. Another edge rusher, but it's neither of them. It's Payne Train from Syracuse to the Saints. It's interesting that these two guys are still falling, as is Shaq Owens. But just like the Cowboys, New Orleans got it right. Payne Train is also an 80 overall, and unlike Rumble, I think he actually does have a development trait. Dragan Brankovic to the Rams. They're going to add a big-time weapon. We thought it was going to be Ishmael, but they get Brankovic, who's still very good in his own right. There's Del Hickson to the Chargers, finally off the board. And then fittingly, the very next pick to the Jets would end up being the kid from Georgia, Ahmad Smith. Hickson's a 75, Smith is a 74, so neither of them are bad by any stretch, but it looks like Dallas and New Orleans got it right by picking other edge rushers. Ahmad Smith, though, I'm really surprised fell. I thought he was great in the playoff. Alberto Gondola, tackle to the Bengals. The Falcons select Amaris Courtney. We're going to see a lot of linebackers go, I think, in the next 20, 30 picks. He's going to kickstart the run. Jaw Traylor, defensive tackle to the Chiefs. Patrick Ringo, defensive tackle to the Giants. The Vikings get Shaq Owens from San Diego State, the edge rusher. The 49ers are back on the board. They get Jameel Maul, wide receiver out of SMU, really redoing their receiver room. For a while, he was at Arkansas with Gerald Hannock, played with the Mustangs last year where he was really good. The Texans get Dejani Fleetley, center from West Virginia, and the Ravens get Isaac Sarfo, the edge rusher out of the Ohio State University. So there is your second round. The Browns do not add anybody here, given that, well, we traded our second rounder away to the Rams. But we do have a pick in the third round. I think number 84 or 86, something like that in the middle. Our own pick, put it that way. It is number 86, so we've still got to wait a little bit, but at least we get to pick in this round. Now, there are some surprising players at safety still here. Rayleigh Kearns and Aries Frost from Georgia. Carlos Ruiz from Texas Tech. Josh Fenix from Ohio State. I'm really surprised, especially about the Georgia guys. I thought they both had a chance to go in the first round, but each of them have fallen here to the third. I thought long and hard about moving up for one of them, and I'll talk about that thought process in a minute. We do have another trade, though, across the league. The Buccaneers have a lot of corners to pay. Benjamin Morrison, Jacob Parrish, and Zion McCollum are all free agents at the end of the year. Morrison and Parrish are 24. McCollum is 29. So it would make sense that they're going to prioritize the young guys, especially because they drafted Quincy Omodu in the second round last year, who I think is good. So they're going to send him to Baltimore for a third. The Ravens looking for someone who can pair with Nate Wiggins. And then I really thought about moving up to the top pick of the third round to get one of those Georgia safeties, but I ultimately decided against it. I think it would be reckless to move up because we just traded up and we gave away so much. We don't really have the flexibility to do that anymore. We have to let the board play out to us and stick with the lack of picks that we have over the next 3 years. And if we do make trades, it probably needs to be moving down. So the Georgia safeties did not end up lasting long. Rayleigh Kearns was the first player off the board in the third round to the Jets, and then Aries Frost was the second player. He goes to the Dolphins. Kearns is a 76, Frost is a 78. Both guys only have normal dev, but I also don't think either of them should have fell to the third round. Kelvin England's the other guy I would have thought about trading up for, but he's 71 overall, and he's also 24 years old. Corey Dalton goes to the Rams. I'm excited for him. 76 hidden dev. I think Sean McVay will be able to maximize him, which we could not do at Virginia Tech, but he still ends up being the second tight end off the board because he's got elite physical traits. He's gigantic. He's really fast. I'm curious to see if he ends up as a better pro than he was college player. Deshaun Goldman, guard, East Carolina to the Cardinals. Carlos Ruiz, safety from Texas Tech to the Ravens. I'm really liking Baltimore's draft. I think they've done well Josh Fennick, safety from Ohio State to the Commanders. He had an interception against Judah Hudson in the Rose Bowl and had the big one in the national championship in the fourth quarter against Georgia. Deacon Cisco, receiver LSU to the Cowboys. I like that pick. I thought about a George Pickens trade. I wasn't able to find one, but it seems like Dallas is looking to replace him. Deontay McCray, tackle to New England. Raul Mendetia, guard, Alabama to the Eagles. Howie Roseman just picked a guy projected in the 5th round, and guess what? He's a 79 overall with hidden development. Shout out Howie. Jimmy Shaver, corner to Seattle. Amon Carson, safety to the Lions. LaFar Delorhan, tight end from Stanford to the Buffalo Bills. Trace Ambrell, cornerback out of Syracuse to the Jags, doubling down on corner. Christian McCain-Parker, another raw athletic linebacker to the Panthers. They've done that twice today. Unfortunately, though, the Panthers took the wrong raw athletic linebacker named Christian. Christian Johnson with the Broncos, he does have a very high development trait. Jamar Kamara, another linebacker to the Bucs, and then with their next pick, they get Matt Jordan, corner out of Miami. 4 of the last 5 picks have been linebackers. I told you we'd see a run. Mohamed Ajayi to the Niners, Mustafa Banachui, center to the Bears, and then Deontay Jett, running back Toledo to the Saints. He's only a 73, which is unfortunate, but really good player in his last 2 years with the Rockets. A big reason why they almost made the playoff this year. We're finally back on the board. It's been 82 picks since we've last gotten to choose a player. I thought about moving up for one of those safeties. I ultimately opted against it. There was another guy I was hoping would fall here, and he did, and I'm really excited about him. With the 86th pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select Roylan Golden, linebacker from the University of Georgia. The Browns are picking a linebacker again? This is a 4th year in a row the Browns have used a top 100 pick on an off-ball linebacker. And that's not to mention we just gave Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah a 4-year extension. So why are we picking another linebacker? Carson Schwarzenegger's going to need a payday, and I would expect us to give it to him. We picked Tanner Mariani in the 3rd round of year 1. We picked John Okpurowook in the 1st round last year. So why are we picking another? Golden's interesting to me. We've gotten to watch him a lot at Georgia. He's a guy who seems very instinctive, knows how to find the ball, 6'3", 230, good size. He's not the fastest, though. He's not the most athletic. I think it's more about the instincts and the production with him rather than the speed and the sideline-to-sideline ability. Former 5-star recruit who isn't necessarily a 5-star athlete, but he's a 5-star football player to me. And my thought process is we can play him a little bit at linebacker as a depth piece. I'm going to try to convert him into an edge rusher. He had 3.5 sacks as a freshman. He played a little bit off the edge. But then Georgia put him at linebacker because that was obviously his better position. He was great in the playoff. 29 tackles, 6 for a loss. Watching Georgia in the playoff over the last few years, it's always felt like wherever the football is, Roy Golden seems to be able to find it. Extremely instinctive. Even though he's not the fastest, I think he's a really good covered player, whether it's zone or man. Good blitzer. And I think with his measurables, add maybe 15, 20 pounds of strength. He's already pretty strong as is, so it's not like he's necessarily weak or would be a crazy projection. But I think there's a world where in the future, probably not right now, but in a year or two, he could get meaningful snaps for us as an edge rusher, and we can use him in a variety of different ways. I do want to keep him around the line of scrimmage because he knows where to find the ball. He's instinctive. He's like a dog hunting for its prey. He's going to be a hidden development, only 21-year-old guy with a lot of room to get better. 75 overall as a linebacker, as an edge rusher. I think he'd also be a 75, but that would be as a run stopper. His speed rusher and power rushing archetype ratings would both be in the high 60s. So clearly he would have a lot of work to do as a pass rusher. I'm not expecting him to be the Robin to Myles Garrett's Batman right away, but in a year or two, you never know. I think he could be a fun project for us to develop throughout the course of the year. I don't know what he's going to do for us this year, but he's only 21, so we've got time to figure it out with him. Josiah Reddick, running back out of Louisville to the Chargers. He'll pair up with a Marion Hampton, who I think is the best running back in the league. Class is in session, kids. Christian Session, wide receiver, Notre Dame to the Jets. Running back Sean Burris to the Commanders. Of the 2 running backs who got picked, I think Burris from Oklahoma, he'll end up being the better player. He'll pair up with Breece Hall. Crosby Lake, defensive tackle to Atlanta. Evan Newby, linebacker, Clemson to the Chiefs. Le'Veon Hope, corner to the Giants. I don't think New York's had a great draft, but I think that's a good pick. He really impressed me in the playoff 2 years ago. Another instinctive guy who can find the ball. George Rizzo, edge rusher out of Texas to the Vikings, 11.5 sacks. The only guy who could get after the quarterback, but then his leg got destroyed in their first playoff game against Oklahoma State. I don't think he's going to play a lot as a rookie because of it. Linebacker, Keelan Wall to the Titans. Edge rusher Rudy Sledge from Ohio State to the Texans. Could have been a first-rounder, but then he really tested poorly at the Combine. And then Jamarian Suggs, the running back from Alabama, the RB1 over Jalen Gandy, goes to the Packers. He'll pair up with Josh Jacobs and Javon Hall. That'll wrap up the third. We end up sticking and picking Georgia linebacker Roylan Golden, a former 5-star recruit who we hope can possibly be an edge rusher for us down the line. Now on to day 3. We only had 2 picks in the top 100, but we do have a good number of picks on day 3. The problem is none of them are in the top 150, so we're going to have to wait a little bit. There are some good players still here. Kyrie Sampson, I'm surprised about. I was a big fan of him at USC. I wonder when the next quarterback is going to go. Guys like Graham Glikowski and Galeo Barron are projected in this range. We haven't had a QB go since Nick Eberle at number 29. And ultimately, the run on quarterbacks is going to start right away. Graham Glikowski out of Miami is a Baltimore Raven. 71 overall, hit in development. Glikowski's story is an interesting one, a 3-year starter. The question with him was always about the turnovers. He had 17 interceptions as a senior, 11 last year. Glikowski played really well a year ago, helping lead Miami to the national championship, but he got hurt in the championship game, which was really unfortunate, and their backup was just terrible. Bud Cowell, wide receiver USC to the Dolphins. He is small, but he is good. DeAndre Flanagan, defensive tackle NC State to the Vikings. The Rams get Brian Henches, guard from SMU. The Cardinals get Carson Mayfield, quarterback out of Texas Tech. So get this. Carson Mayfield is going to be the best quarterback in this draft. 78 overall. I believe he is one of, if not maybe the only one, with superstar development. 2 years ago, as a redshirt sophomore, he was incredible. 4,191 yards, 43 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 72% completion percentage. He was on a fast track to be a first-round pick, but as a redshirt junior, I thought he was disappointing. This year as a senior, he was quite good, though. 3,156 yards, 33 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 62% completion percentage. He's not going to start because the Cardinals have Wambley Mendoza, but if they don't want to pay him, the Cardinals might have just hit the jackpot with Carson Mayfield, who could end up becoming an absolute monster down the line. What a pick for them at number 101 overall. Marquestin Vickers, linebacker, Louisiana Tech to the Baltimore Ravens. The Commanders, they joined the quarterback parade. Rasheer Stewart from Toledo. He's also quite good for a 4th-rounder. 74 overall, hit in development, was a really good player at Boston College, transfers to Toledo, where he anchors probably the second-best team in the group of 5. 4,800 yards this year, 49 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 70% completion percentage. Last year at Boston College, he did not throw a single interception. Only 11 picks in his 3 years as a starter. That's insane. Tyshawn Treater, running back, Michigan. So the Cowboys now have Teamer and Treater in the running back room. And then another quarterback, Galeo Barron from Ole Miss to the 49ers. He will be the QB3 behind Brock Purdy and Hoppy Reynolds. Only a 69 overall with normal, little disappointing. But Barron's a dog. We got to play him twice this year. I thought he was great both times. 47 passing touchdowns with just 6 interceptions. James Basilia, tackle to the Eagles. Hughes Prince, wide receiver from Hawaii to the Seahawks. Only Nazir Ismail, Lamarian Starzl, and Adrian Moon had more yards this year than Prince. A.J. Torrey, D-tackle to the Lions. Malapai, the edge rusher to the Bills. Run Johnson, wide receiver to the Jags. Manu Coronado, center to Carolina. The Broncos get Shada Polk, defensive back out of Alabama by way of Tennessee. Clayton Kaufman, edge rusher to the Bucks. Kyrie Sampson finally off the board. He's only a 71, but the last time the Steelers drafted a USC receiver was Eli Drake, who has ended up being really good. And Sampson's only 21, so I think he will still develop there. Dylan DeRitter, guard to the Niners. Matthew Bootle, cornerback out of TCU to the Bears. The Saints are on the board, but I'm actually interested in moving up. There's a guy I really want, and I look at our spot at corner. We're really deep here. Eric Henderson, I think, is ready to be a full-time starter. The Nate Hobbs trade, I think, has been a really good one. Both Hobbs and Greg Newsome expire at the end of the year. And of the two, I think I'd rather pay Nate Hobbs. I think it makes sense to trade away Greg Newsome, who's been a good starter for us for a while. We gave him the 3-year extension after year 1, and I think that ended up being a good move, although he hasn't quite lived up to his season number 1. He only has the 1 year left. As I mentioned, he's due for a new deal. and he will be 29 when that contract kicks in. Now, Hobbs is a year older and a rating point worse, but I think he was better last year. He has superstar development. Remember, we traded 2 4s and Martin Emerson to get Hobbs. I think 2 4s for Greg Newsome would be pretty fair. It's only 1 year of Newsome compared to a year and a half of Hobbs, but Newsome is also younger and rating-wise better. I think it's a good trade for New Orleans. They get a really good player. They don't have to give up a top 100 pick, and we, who traded our 4s away to get Nate Hobbs, are back in the 4th round over the next 2 years. So now the question is, which player are the Browns moving up for here? It's a guy I've been infatuated with for years, and I'm really excited to get my hands on him. With the 117th pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select Evan Sutton, running back from the University of Miami. This is a guy who we've been following closely over the last 3 years, and during that process, I really got excited about him as an NFL prospect. There are some clear deficiencies to him as a prospect, hence why he's going in the 4th, but he is so talented. Now, there are running backs projected ahead of him, including his own teammate, Damon Hershey. Tamario Harold is a monster at Nebraska, but he's just too slow for my liking. As good of a player as he was with the Huskers. Bryson Mickens-Corrence, we got to play against him twice. He was really impressive, but he ran a much slower 40 time than expected. Sutton, meanwhile, clocked in at 4.37, 4.34 at the Miami Pro Day. He was outdone by his teammate Damon Hershey, who ran a 4.25. But don't get it twisted, Sutton was the RB1 at Miami last year. 5'11", 178. He is skinny, and it shows with his injury history. As a sophomore at Marshall, he only played 5 games after a great freshman year with the Thundering Herd. Transfers up to Alabama because it's clear he's good enough for the SEC, where he shared the backfield with both Jamarian Suggs and Jalen Gandy. He was the RB1 that year, let me make that clear, over a 2nd and a 3rd rounder picked ahead of him, but he only played 8 games because of injury. And then this year at Miami, he was really impressive. I thought he was good, but not great in the playoff. I don't think they gave him the ball enough. He did 5 catches against Georgia. But against us, he was really impressive. And watching him, kind of like I've talked about with Nazir Ismail, it's clear he just moves differently. I mean, his ability to make guys miss in space is remarkable. This is not a guy who I think is ever going to get 30 touches a game in the NFL, but he's a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield. We saw him impress as a receiver in the semifinal game against Georgia. This is a change of pace back who's probably at his peak going to get 10 touches a game, but you hope 1 or 2 of them can be broken off potentially for a really big play because he can outrun just about anyone. Now, of course, our running back room is in an interesting spot. We've had the duo of Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson, 2 guys who really work well off each other, but they're both free agents at the end of the year, and I don't think it makes sense to extend both of them. Picking Sutton does not bode well for Dylan Sampson, because Sutton's skill set is a lot more similar to that of Sampson. Of the 2 backs we have now, I actually think Sampson's been the better player through 3 seasons, but he's also missed 10 games in that stretch. Judkins, I don't think, has missed any. So this is a guy who I think, theoretically, could take over the Dylan Sampson role if we choose not to pay him and do a really good job. 96 speed, 95 acceleration, 98 agility. Now, it's complicated because, for one thing, like Sampson, Evan Sutton is injury prone. And also, I think Dylan Sampson's a really good player. He might be too good for us to let go. And at that point, I'm not entirely sure what the fit would look like in the backfield, but I think Evan Sutton's too good to just pass up here. Marcel Kuttner, guard to the Steelers. Zaire Lucas, linebacker, Ohio State to the Chargers. Damon Hershey does not have to wait too much longer. He goes to the Jets. His rating is lower than that of Sutton, for what it's worth. Bryson Mickens-Corrence, meanwhile, ends up with the Raiders. I thought he was the better college player than his cousin Chris Mickens, very slightly. They're both awesome. Both guys are on the slower side, but I think Chris Mickens is a little more agile, hence why he went before last year, earlier in the 4th to the Falcons. Speaking of, they select Humphrey Solomon, safety from Alabama. The Chiefs get Justice Watkins, safety from Virginia Tech. The second member of the Smoke and Mirrors secondary, which of course has been destroyed by not just guys going to the NFL, but also Caleb Fleming leaving for Penn State in the transfer portal. I'm excited about Watkins, though. He pairs up with Nick Pulley, who the Chiefs drafted in the 1st round, potentially is the safety tandem of the future for the Kansas City Chiefs. Tyler Dexter, wide receiver, Minnesota to the Giants. He's a young guy, one of the youngest in this class. I like his upside. Jadel Mathis, quarterback, North Carolina to the Titans. Did not throw a single interception this year, but that's really the only thing I can say positively. He's a 61 overall. David Ezukamara, tight end, also to the Titans. Anthony Incognito, defensive tackle to the Jets. And then the Packers get Stephon Sizemore, defensive tackle out of Purdue. So we did not enter the day with a fourth rounder, but we do add one, along with a fourth rounder in next year's class from New Orleans at the expense of Greg Newsome, who I'm going to miss, one of the original Browns, who's been a good player for us over the last 3 years. But I'm ready to move forward with the young guys we have in the secondary. Dom Proctor and Eric Henderson Jr. as the starters on the outside. Nate Hobbs in the slot. Jeff Gokhan can play in dime packages. I think a lot of these young guys like Proctor and Henderson, they're going to be ready for bigger roles this year, making someone like Newsome, who I don't think it makes sense to extend, pretty expendable. Now on to the 5th round, and we actually do have a lot of picks the rest of the way. We have a 5, a 6, and back-to-back picks in the early 7th. That includes our own 5th rounder at 150. The Raiders will start as in round 5 with Jason Sanders, corner out of Notre Dame. Maybe the only guy this year who I thought did a good job covering Nazir Ismail. Keelan Cribbs, edge rusher out of Clemson to the Dolphins. The Colts get Percy Abel. He's a running back wide receiver hybrid. The other guy like that who was drafted in this series was Nathan Wilson, who just won the Offensive Player of the Year. If Percy Abel can give the Colts half of what Nathan Wilson has with the Eagles, it'll be a good pick. Logan Majors, guard to the Rams. Lorenzo Butcher, tackle to the Cardinals. A lot of linemen here. Trayvon Tuggle, guard to the Ravens. Cordell Balkeson, safety to the Washington Commanders. Dallas picks another receiver. Jennings Parmelli. George Pickens, you better pack your bags, my brother. Gideon Deere, cornerback to the New England Patriots. The Dolphins select Marcus Detterline, guard from Tennessee. The Seahawks get Quincy Giacich, tight end out of Ole Miss. The Lions select running back Tamario Harold, one of my favorite players from the series. He gets to go to my favorite team. He's a Dan Campbell type of guy. The problem is he's really slow. He's only a 72 with normal. As I've said throughout the process with Harold, if he ran a 4.5, he would go in the first round. Like, he's genuinely that good. Over 5 yards a carry, over 1,200 yards in each of the last 3 years. He has led this Nebraska team through thick and thin. They got robbed from a playoff spot this year, but he's just too slow for the next level. Zach Speaks to the Bills. J.B. Sampson, another Buckeye to the Jags. We've got to be close to 15 Ohio State players by now. Jalen Highsmith, quarterback, NC State to the Panthers. He stays in North Carolina. Anthony Donnerson, defensive tackle to the Broncos. Perry Polyworld, the edge rusher from San Diego State to the Bucks. Cal Redmond, height, speed receiver from Boise State to the Ravens. The Eagles select Molly Luani, center from USC. The Bears get DeAndre Duchess, linebacker, Michigan. I would have thought about picking him probably in the 6th. I didn't think he'd go this early, but I do like him. And then Harrison Mallory, safety out of Illinois to the New Orleans Saints. We're back on the board here. Messiah Cook is still available. Some good receivers are still here in the 5th round. A number of players I like here. I think we're going to land a good player. So at 150, we've certainly moved far down the board, but it's only our 4th pick of the day so far. With the 150th pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select Wilton Samaleviunga, quarterback from Texas Tech University. The first quarterback that we've drafted in this series since Kieran Riddle, the number 1 pick 2 years ago. Samaleviunga is a really interesting case. 21 years old, 4-year starter for 3 different programs. This guy is young, but wise beyond his years, and he's played for a lot of different spots. He's 6'5", and he's a freak athlete. 4.47 40, 4.43 at the Pro Day. He's pretty accurate, and he's been a quality starter at QB at Tulane, Air Force, and most recently, Texas Tech. He's tall, but he's slender. I think head coach Puma Whitlock probably will be excited about working with a player of Samaleviunga's build because there's a lot of similarities. The big blemish with Samaleviunga, which is why he's going in the 5th round, is his arm strength. He doesn't really have an NFL-level arm. But otherwise, he checks off a lot of boxes at quarterback for me. Certainly up and down as a true freshman at Tulane, but you expect that for a true freshman. I thought he got better as a sophomore, enters the portal. Virginia Tech went after him pretty hard, but he goes to Air Force where he throws 41 touchdowns. Then he transfers up to Texas Tech, and I know the numbers are not that impressive, but don't get it twisted. I thought he had a really good year for them. I think he's the 2nd best rushing quarterback in the class after Judah Hudson. Played great in the playoff game against Notre Dame. Did struggle against Miami, although I don't think he was horrible. And he ran it really well in both of those games. At 6'5" with his speed, this guy is an athlete. I mean, he can make a lot of the throws, and I do think he can be an NFL quality passer one day, even if he's not there right now. But we drafted him because he's an athlete. He's going to play a role for us this year. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but look at him go. I mean, he's spinning away from guys, juking guys out. I mean, this guy is a dynamic runner. Other than Judah Hudson and maybe Ariane Igwebuike, I thought he was the best rushing quarterback maybe in America. Had the crazy run against Notre Dame. Had a sick rushing touchdown against Miami in the second round of the playoff. And what I like most about this guy is he's a friggin' dog. He had multiple lingering injuries this year at Texas Tech. Had to miss 2 or 3 games. In the first game of the year against Duke, he tore his labrum. He was back a week later. He missed 1 game. Then he suffered another injury that for most players would be a while, but he only missed 1 game. I mean, this guy is a dog. He will do whatever it takes to stay on the field. He gives more effort than anyone on the field. And this is the type of kid who I think players in the locker room will rally around. 71 overall, which for a quarterback is pretty interesting. At 21 years old, no less. Now, he only has normal development. He doesn't have a super strong arm. He has 99 awareness, though. This guy just kind of has an it factor and a self-awareness to him that not many other guys have. He's a really smart kid, one of the highest character young men in the entire draft. This is the type of player you want in your locker room, and I'm really excited about adding him. I didn't plan on it coming into the day, but I felt like at that spot it's the right choice. Nick Schlesinger, edge rusher to the Chargers. Keisun Ichigui, tight end to the Jets. Christopher Liggett, running back to the Bengals. He is an 81 overall. I think he has superstar development too. Now he's in our division. Very similar player, though, to Dylan Bellamy, their current running back. So I don't know how these two guys are going to complement each other. Austin Jones, corner to the Falcons. Joshua Khalil, running back to the Colts. I like him a lot. He was dinged up in their playoff game, but he's a good player. Wylan Allen, linebacker, Bowling Green State to the Giants. Rico Sanchez, cornerback, Florida State to the Vikings. Gordon Spriggs, corner to the Cowboys, had 8 interceptions 2 years ago, although a little more disappointing this year. Tyshawn Wicker to the Texans, and then the Packers round out the 5th round with Deshaun Agude, the safety from Kentucky. So we go into the 5th round with 1 pick, and we leave with 1. No movement for us, but certainly an interesting pick. Drafting a quarterback in Wilton Samale-Viunga, but I look at the character, I look at the athleticism, I look at the fact that he's only 21 years old, yet he has 4 seasons as a collegiate starter, and I think there's a lot to work with and a lot to be excited about. I think the lack of arm strength will hold him back from ever being like a long-term starter, but he's a fun player who I'm going to try to find creative ways to use because he's a weapon with the ball in his hands, maybe kind of like how the Eagles used Jalen Hurts in his first season when they still had Carson Wentz. Hopefully, Kieran Riddle does not turn into Carson Wentz because that would be bad. Messiah Cook is still on the board, former #1 recruit who was good at Clemson, ran a sub 4.5 at 6'5". I don't know why he's falling. Ben Columbus, tight end Ohio to the Raiders. Cam Davis, tight end out of Oklahoma to the Dolphins. The Colts get Zaire Kirkus, the current active leader in tackles. That was the argument last year for 6th-round linebacker Enrique Bach out of Kent State to the Patriots, and he won the Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think Kirkus is going to be better than the other Georgia State linebacker who went in the 1st round. Watson Wade to the Raiders, offensive tackle. LaMarcus Dogwood, corner to the Cardinals. Trey Nolan Reese, edge rusher, Oregon to the Ravens. Really toolsy player, super athletic, just never put it together. I thought when he was created, he'd be a top 10 pick. McGarrahan to the Commanders, he's an edge rusher. Markel Book, safety to the Cowboys. Roland Lobato, guard to the Patriots. Edge rusher Lonnie Wayne to the Eagles. He stays in Pennsylvania. The Seahawks get Ramir Dayton-Polley from Central Florida. Moses Braum stays in Michigan. He goes to the Detroit Lions, the big tight end. Isaac Wan, wide receiver TCU to the Bills. I think he's more talented than his stats let on from his time at TCU and Baylor. Jaron LaRue, safety from Notre Dame. The last time the Jaguars had the 14th pick in the round and they picked someone from Notre Dame whose name ended in UE, it ended up pretty well. Amari Blue last year. Marlon Langley, I'm surprised these Ole Miss receivers are falling. He's finally off the board. Center Andre Dollars to the Broncos. I thought about him in the 5th. George Ogbongbonigba, the offensive tackle from Rutgers to the Bucks. Matt Rayburn, the other Ole Miss receiver, goes to the Steelers. I thought both of those guys should have gone like 2 rounds ago. Kenyo Dengbo to the Niners. The Bears get linebacker Franhan Moses. The Saints get Connor Jones, offensive guard. The Rams get Kyron Russell, linebacker from Wyoming. Sidney Wiley, cornerback out of Oregon, to the Chargers. I like this kid quite a bit. He's a guy who we heavily recruited at Virginia Tech before this series started. It was him and it was Elihu Gold who we were going after. We landed Gold, who obviously was great. He now plays for the Bills. Lamet, guard to the Jets. Juju Webb, the national championship and college football playoff hero, stays in Ohio with the Bengals. The Falcons select Takahashi Matsugane, the center, and then Chester Wimper, wide receiver from Florida, to the Seattle Seahawks. We're back on the board here in the 6th round, the 28th pick, 188 overall. Messiah Cook is still there. I mean, look at all the receivers here. We don't need one. We already are 5 deep. But there are some intriguing players still here. Ultimately, I opted against picking a receiver, and keep in mind, we have 2 of the next, 6, 7 picks after this, with a couple early 7s. With the 188th pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select C.J. Thomas, offensive tackle out of James Madison University. So we're going back to the state of Virginia, picking an in-state foe. Thomas, the left tackle of the Dukes over the last 2 years, is the selection. I look at a guy with solid production and certainly the size and traits to be a starting NFL tackle. He's 6'6", nearly 330 pounds. He moves really well at his size. So I think there's some upside there, even if he is a little bit rough around the edges. It's not like we're asking him to start, but potentially develop behind some of the tackles who we already have. Especially given Brian O'Neill's surprising retirement, it's good to get another tackle in the building. I think he's at his best blocking in the run game. He is dominant as a run blocker. He has some really impressive reps. As a pass blocker, I think he is solid. He allowed 7 sacks this year and then 5 last year. He didn't allow any in 2035, but he was also a backup, keep in mind, so don't get too excited. But he's been a quality player for James Madison, I feel like. And I think given the size and traits, there's a lot of upside to where he's another guy who could be a better college player than pro. I mean, look at that block against the poor Coastal Carolina defender. I mean, my God, did he get leveled. C.J. Thomas is a kid who loves playing offensive tackle. It's easy to see on tape, particularly in the run game, with some of those dominant reps. Now, unfortunately, traits does not always equal talent. 282nd ranked player in the draft, only normal development. He only has 79 strength. He plays a lot stronger than that strength rating suggests. But yeah, he's only a 65. No one bats 1,000, kids. This is just a depth pick after all. He'll get plenty of run in the preseason to see if he makes the roster or starts the year on the practice squad. So Thomas is the pick here in round 6, but we're not going to have to wait too long. We're going to be quickly up after the turnaround with 2 picks in the 7th. To wrap up round 6, the Vikings select quarterback Rowan Phoebe. Started his career at San Diego State before transferring to the University of Oregon, where he's been over the last 2 years. Abdullah Funmanguli, linebacker, Maryland to the Titans. He's a 76, really good pick. Kashawn Park, safety, Texas A&M to the Texans. And then the Packers get Dylan Draguchevich, safety from Ole Miss. I was going to pick him with one of our 2 7s. He was my top guy left. Well, unfortunately, he's off the board because, of course, it had to be the stinking Packers who stole our guy. Nonetheless, we had C.J. Thomas here in the 6th, a high upside traitsy tackle who, based on his initial ratings, will probably have a hard time reaching his upside, but he'll compete probably to be the number 4 tackle behind, of course, Paris Johnson on the left side, and then whoever starts at right tackle between Mekhi Helwin, who did start a few games for us last year. I thought he was pretty good. And then Robert Egboigbe, who's only 21 years old. We picked him in the 2nd round a year ago, and he has a lot of upside. I thought we were going to redshirt him for another year, but again, Brian O'Neill had to mess up our plans. A lot of these receivers are still on the board, particularly Messiah Cook. I'm really surprised. The number 1 overall recruit, who's a good player, tested well at the combine. I don't have any questions with him, and he's only 20 years old. Why is he falling? Shakir Caruth goes to the Raiders. So I'll be honest, I think Messiah Cook is clearly the best player left on the board. And I'm someone who always believes in picking the BPA and making the rest work out later. However, we're already 5 deep at receiver, and we already have guys who could easily be the 6th. I don't see how Messiah Cook would make our roster. And the problem is, if we put him on the practice squad, he's going to get claimed right away because he's really good. So I just don't see the point of using a pick on a guy who's going to be gone by the start of the year. With the 194th pick in the 2028 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select Hugh Schultz, edge rusher out of UCLA. The biggest need on this Browns roster in the long term is probably edge rusher. Obviously, Myles Garrett's great, but for one thing, he's 32. And I don't know if we have our long-term complement next to him. We re-signed Will McDonald, but only for a year. Jervis Dexter and Donovan Warmack are developing. We did pick Royland Golden in the third, who I'm going to try to make an edge rusher. Maybe Jonathan Peroa gets some edge reps as well this year, but not any true edge rushers. Well, unfortunately, I don't think Hugh Schultz is an edge rusher either. 291 pounds, he runs a 5'2", 40-yard dash. To me, he's a defensive tackle. He goes by the government, though, in the college football save file, Hughes Schultz. I think he's a well-rounded player who was just playing the wrong position at UCLA. They used him as both an edge rusher and as an interior guy, though, as a senior, and that's where he really blew up. He had 11.5 sacks this year. Now, it took him until his age 23 season to break out. That's why he's here in the 7th round. He's going to be 24 as a rookie. But at 290 pounds, I don't think there's going to be any issue transitioning him to the inside full-time. He had a phenomenal season this year at the Bruins, and I think part of the holdup with him is that he was just never on any NFL radars prior to this year, where he ended up being arguably the best player on what was a pretty talented defense. I'm willing to take the shot on him, and he has hit in development. So clearly, he's just kind of a late bloomer, and the early breakout age for him isn't really going to matter. Now, again, I think he's out of position. 64 speed's probably not going to cut it as an edge rusher. He has 88 strength. I don't think we need to really change his build that much. 290 pounds at 6'3" is more than fine as an interior defensive lineman in today's NFL. Now, he's not rated the highest. He's only a 70, which isn't that exciting. But with hidden development and potentially a position change, I do think there could be something there with a 7th round pick especially. We're already good at defensive tackle, though. Mason Graham is going to need an extension at some point. Mike Hall, we did re-sign, but only on a 1-year deal. Kosumi Bigman, of course, is here. And then Juan Sosa we extended. I thought he was awesome for us as a UDFA last year. But Schultz gives us another guy who can play in the middle. And then guess what? We're right back on the board. Back-to-back picks with the 195th pick in the 2028 NFL Draft. The Cleveland Browns select Gideon Indonesia, cornerback out of Bowling Green State. We're staying with a local guy in the state of Ohio. Indonesia is polarizing because this is a guy who's been extremely productive for the Falcons over the last few years. There's a lot of good corners left on the board, not quite at the level of the receivers, but I do think we need another corner on the roster. And even though Indonesia is not the most athletic, I thought he was going to be the slowest of the corners remaining left. 4'6" isn't great, but there are a few guys slower than him. I think he can be a special teamer. I think he's a really good tackler. And what's most exciting about him is the ball skills. 17 interceptions over the last 3 years. He had 9 as a sophomore, 3 last year. The issue, though, was that he was an inconsistent cover player. The reason why he had 9 picks as a sophomore is because quarterbacks were picking on him. As a junior, I thought he got better in coverage, but this year he really put it all together. 5 interceptions, very good in coverage. Now, he's not the tradesiest. He's only 5'10", probably more of a slot guy. He played a lot in the slot at Bowling Green, where I think he really excelled. He's good in man coverage and zone coverage, and even though he's not the fastest, he's gritty, he's tough, he's a great run defender. He's a guy who's going to do the little things, the dirty work, and because of that, I think he can be a potential special teams ace for us. I think he could also be a kick returner. I know he's not the fastest, but he's used to tracking the football. I think maybe more so as a punt returner. He would probably excel compared to being a kick returner because we do kind of need one. Nazir Ismail was the punt returner at Virginia Tech, but given that we just traded 3 first-round picks for him, he will not be returning punts for us, put it that way. Now, the one twist about Indonesia, which is not ideal, is that he is 25 years old. So, yeah, he's kind of an unk. I was hoping he would be better off the bat, given his age, because he is only a 68 overall. He does have a temporary boost. I was hoping he'd be more like a 73, 74, to be completely honest. But I still see a future for him as a special teamer. And in the 7th round, if you're getting a guy who can find ways to get on the field, who can track the ball and tackle, then I think this could end up being a good pick for us. We shouldn't come into the 7th round expecting necessarily a starter, but a guy who can possibly play a role for us. And I do think as of now he would have the inside track to making the roster, but he's going to have to earn it. Let's go through the rest of round 7. We'll see if we have any more moves. George Santo to the Rams. The Cardinals get Ja Lennon, wide receiver out of Texas. I think he is hidden dead. That's a good pick. Jalen Toure, edge rusher from Air Force. I thought about him, but he just did not test well enough for my liking. Manny Mugelli, corner from Nebraska. The Huskers are probably going to have 3 7th-round corners. The Cowboys pick their third receiver, Ja'Kai Beach from Oklahoma State. Quincy McCullers from UNC to New England. The Eagles pick Theo Mukafasgno-Puren. I actually kind of got that pretty close. Offensive tackle. Paris Shipman of the Seahawks. The Lions get defensive tackle Frank Jones V. The Bills get Everett Ellington, an edge rusher out of BYU. The Jacksonville Jaguars get Augusto Duarte, 3-year starter at tight end over Miami. The problem is he is really slow, much like Tamario Harold, and that's unfortunately going to hurt him. Feldstead, edge rusher to the Panthers. The Broncos get Florida State's quarterback, Derek Bowen. Caleb Grubb, wide receiver out of Michigan by way of Missouri to the Buccaneers. Tevin Trimble, cornerback out of Tennessee to the Steelers. That's a really good pick for the 7th round. Moe Isaiah, tight end out of USC to the Niners. Christian Goodley, I told you we'd see more Nebraska defensive backs. He goes to the Bears. Zion Henderson, running back UCLA to the Saints. We got to play against him this year. He was the real deal. He's nice. Cole Gooden, the other Clemson receiver, goes to the Giants. I thought Gooden would go before this too, but Messiah Cook is still here. Luis Mamala, tight end to the Chargers. Tavares Duggan, wide receiver, Wisconsin. He had like 130 yards in the first half of their playoff game against South Florida. Alex Centeno, the third Nebraska corner, goes to the Bengals. Samson Abbott, former Virginia Tech Hokie, transferred to Duke for his last year. He goes to Atlanta. Paul LaRue, running back Army to the Chiefs. Alfonso Allen, corner SMU to the Giants. Mac Fronte, running back Arizona State. He's also nice. Much like Zion Henderson, he's not a 7th-round player to me. Manuel Herrera, edge rusher to the Titans. The Texans get wide receiver Vondre Connor. And then Mr. Irrelevant now belongs to the Packers. Messiah Cook is still on the board. Only 3 guys are within 100 picks of him. Nobody's within 50. I mean, this is a major surprise. And sure enough, he ends up going undrafted. Deacon Smith-Jones is the final pick. So Messiah Cook is an undrafted free agent. At this point, maybe we do sign him if he's still available once we get the opportunity. I think Cook is in the low 70s, which isn't great, but like he's 20 years old. For the 4th round, which is where he was projected, that would have been completely fine. I think the NFL completely overthought it with him. He's tall, he's fast, he's productive. He was the #1 recruit. He lived up to it. He was a good player at Clemson. I'm shocked that he didn't get picked. Genuinely one of the more surprising draft slides that I've seen. But nonetheless, that wraps up the draft. We do make the big move. Going up to number 4, we traded 3 number 1s, 2 number 2s, and a 6 to get Nazir Ismail. It's a lot, but I really think it's going to be worth it. I know it's a gamble, but I thought it through, and it makes a lot of sense for us. I think the rest of our draft was solid. Evan Sutton's going to play this year. Wright Golden hopefully will play this year. Wilton Samale the Younger will hopefully play this year. And then as we look at our schedule, we've got a fun slate of games, especially early. Week 1, Sunday night at home against the reigning AFC champion Houston Texans. And then we got Monday night the following week against the Steelers. They were a team who could have picked a quarterback early, but they're going to ride it out with Brendan Holloway. Ravens week 3, Dolphins week 4. Hopefully we get to see Judah Hudson. Steelers again week 5. Really tough stretch before the bye with the Jets, the Giants, and the Bengals. And then we don't get the full 2-week bye, unfortunately. We have a Thursday game right after. But it is Thanksgiving, where we're going to Dallas to play against the Cowboys. So it is cool to play on Thanksgiving. It's not cool that we don't get an actual bye week, really. Then after that, Sunday night versus the Chargers, Monday night against Ryan Lockley and the Saints, and then we finish with the Eagles, the Bengals, and the Bills. So an interesting group of games to wrap up the year. That'll finish the episode, though. I hope you guys enjoyed another really fun draft in the books. I'm super excited to get the season started back up here and with Virginia Tech. I think weeks 1 and hopefully week 2 will be on either Thursday or Friday. And then this weekend will be the season preview for Virginia Tech. We'll get the regular season started there next week. I'm really excited to have football back. I know it's been a little while, but obviously with MLB The Show, that's been the focus. But I'm happy that we're going to be able to get back to normal. Hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Peace out.